Hello and welcome to White Centipede Noise Podcast. This is a special edition, Moment of Truth, with Mack Chami. We're going to talk about your project KOUFAR and give you a chance to educate us on the historical, personal context of the project and set the record straight on some things. So, welcome, Mack.
Oh, hey, glad to be back, Oscar. Pleasure, man. Yeah, man. Always good to see you. Always, man.
You too.
Yeah.
So KOUFAR, it's your power electronics project. It's been active for, it was one of your first projects, dealing with your Lebanese heritage and history of Lebanon. I'm very ignorant to the topic, as I assume and know the majority of people watching this are. So tell me what you got and break down the project.
Absolutely. I think most importantly, I think I need to start probably with my family's history and set that record straight, because sadly the narrative of this project, and often at times too the narrative of my life, seems to get hijacked by people, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. But so I will start with, I can go back as far as my great-grandfather Wadia, who, and just to, I guess, give a point of reference, right now, where I'm speaking about my great-grandfather, I'm going to grab his picture here in a second. He lived in the Ottoman Empire time. So this is even before there was a proper Syria, a proper Lebanon. These names existed, but it didn't count on a map. Like, you could find some of those old school world globes and it just says Ottoman Empire. Grimy. Anywho, though, I don't know. Hopefully the reflection isn't so bad, but there he is.
Cool. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's from around the 30s.
Wow.
And
that's your great-grandfather?
Yeah, my great-grandfather on my father's side. His name's Wadia. And this man is a huge reason of why I'm even here. When he was very young, during the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Turkish soldiers showed up and they killed his parents. And he took, I believe it was 2 sisters, and the both of them fled from the southern tip of Lebanon, or at this time they used to call it Greater Syria. And he took them and they fled and escaped into more proper Syria, the Damascus area. And he did this barefoot, and they were eating bugs the whole way to survive, avoiding the soldiers. Because, like I said, the time the Ottoman Empire was falling, and oftentimes when empires fall, especially people in the military tend to take advantage of situations and do brutal, awful, horrible things. So he did that. I mean, he sacrificed. I mean, I shouldn't even say sacrifice. There was no such thing as like going to proper school or anything like that. He was illiterate. He couldn't read and couldn't write. And he died as such too. And the man actually died at the age of 93, picking fruit out of a tree. An incredible and resilient man. And what I think is so interesting is that even though he died illiterate and couldn't read, couldn't write, his son George, my grandfather George, would go on to become one of the most well-known authors, poets, and journalists from the Middle East. One of the most humbling occasions that in my life that happened was actually at my wedding, where I got to meet part of more of Nicole's family. My wife is she's Syrian Lebanese as well, and I met this gentleman named Khaldoon, and it blew my mind when he told me that he remembers and loved reading my grandfather's work while he was living in the Middle East.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So, I guess to kind of wrap up the family stuff, my George was my grandfather, and he would have 3 kids, my father being the middle one. And my father eventually would be the one to leave, the only one to leave the country, to come to America because he wanted to be a doctor. He basically gave up having close ties with them. My first time visiting Lebanon in 2006, there is a joke that the family has about my dad saying that he's the son that they never knew because he ended up spending more time in America than he actually did in the Middle East. So, that's just I guess this is just as good of a best summary of my background.
Sure.
And I'm trying to drive home the point that I'm first generation, and a lot of people sometimes don't understand exactly what that means.
Right.
But, when you're first gen, I feel like a lot of times, especially in this country, there's this clash that you feel within yourself, and not just someone who's mixed like me, but even, someone that's just first generation and born here, where you feel like you are just caught between 2 worlds all the time. And especially, in a place that more often than not may not be understanding or kind or even care to grasp who and what you are. So I guess from here, we'll talk about what inspired KOUFAR, how the project was born. And the project was born out of my experiences of being evacuated in 2006. Now, for those that don't know what happened in 2006, what happened was Hezbollah decided to attack Israel, or I shouldn't even say that, I should just say Palestine, but that's a whole other topic. But, they reached across and they killed some and they took some hostage. And I'll never forget my father waking me up in that apartment in Naash and telling me, "Hey, Mac, you need to come out and you need to watch the TV." He's like, "I can't explain this to you right now. You need to just come and see." And I came out, and they were talking about it. And I'll never forget looking to my father and asking him, "How much deep shit are we in?" And he looked at me and he says, "We're in deep shit, Mac. We're going to be in deep shit." And fast forward to 5 hours later, the airport runways have been bombed. Wow. No one can leave. They bombed the airport runways. Within 5 hours, they did that. And they set up a naval blockade. And thus began waiting for the U.S. Army to come and evacuate American citizens. And we had to wait an extra week. And it was finally when my father and I got on the USS Nashville, and we were sitting out in the Mediterranean Ocean, and it was me pacing on the ship because I'm just bored and nothing else to do. This is before all the cool cell phone stuff and yada yada yada. I'm just pacing, and that's when I realized that I wanted to make a project. I wanted to do some kind of musical offering that reflected my experiences in going through this, and going through war, and going through and getting evacuated. I wanted to do that. And the reason why I picked KOUFAR, and KOUFAR, for those that don't know what it means, that do not know what it means, KOUFAR is plural of kafir, and kafir singular means one who denies God. That's all it means. And plural means those. And the purpose of me picking this name is that it's a name and a title that has been thrown around by just about every single various group in Lebanon. It's been used against, everyone's been saying it to each other. And frankly, the behavior in the country is not of one who actually believes in God or believes in the teachings of Christ. No, it's none of that. And so it's a very blanket statement that we're all kind of wrong. We're all kind of sinners. Now, now people are going to, of course, jump and say, well, if it's about everything, how come you use only Kitab and Lebanese Armed Forces imagery? And what that goes back to, plain and simple, is the fact that my father and the family, my father grew up in Ashrafiyeh. He grew up in Ashrafiyeh, about 2 blocks away from the Kitab headquarters. Mm-hmm. My grandfather, George, was a big Kitab supporter, helped set up press events because of, obviously, he was a journalist, author, had those connections. There's actually, in my grandfather's memoirs, there's a really, really powerful picture of Pierre Gemayel, the founder of the Kitab Party, doing the traditional greeting in Lebanon. When we greet, we kiss 3 times, one, mm-hmm. back and forth on the cheeks. There's a great picture of him. Yeah. And, before I get into talking about the politics itself of those parties and whatnot, the way that I've tried to put them in the project is very much say how, like, Kendrick Lamar talks about gang stuff.
Right.
Because the fact of the matter is that you get born into these things and it's not like you have a choice in it. So what you grow up hearing, it's what you grow up, seeing around you. It's not something that you can just flat out deny. How do you turn your back on your world, Right. And now that's not to say that these people are saints. They're fucking like war criminals. They've done absolutely horrible things. Some people, some groups have grown and moved past, the Civil War bullshit. Like, for example, the Kitab Party right now, currently, people, when they talk about this project, they always want to discuss its earliest roots, and they want to discuss the atrocities that took place, in the Civil War. But now, currently, the Kitab Party has actually stepped back from the government, because what's going on right now in Lebanon is Hezbollah has hijacked the government. Because when the Civil War ended, and every single militia and various group gave up their arms, gave up their weapons, Hezbollah did not. Mm-hmm. They held on to them, and this is now the problem of now there's 2 armies in the country, and how do you have any sort of control on this?
Right.
And then you add that in with Hezbollah's use of assassination, and of course it keeps people quiet. And so, for as much as people like to say that the Kitab Party is fascist, this and that, I would say that Hezbollah is definitely more the fascist group out of all of this, because they're not allowing for any sort of democratic process whatsoever. The Kitab Party always did. They never tried to hijack anything. They're not like see, it's kind of funny, like the Hezbollah and the Republicans, they got more in common than they think they do. Hijacking shit these days. I think that's kind of funny. But and I was going to say too, Oscar and everyone listening, bear with me if I get lost and confused, because even I myself do, because it's very dense.
Sure,
so,
of course it is.
Like as I was saying though, some groups have evolved. And so now the Kitab Party, in its current state, has actually stepped back from the government to oppose what's going on, because they don't agree that Hezbollah can just do as they please, and it's a spit in the face of democracy. Mm-hmm. And so, that's where they're at right now. They're actually trying to stop what some would call the current fascism of Lebanon. And not only that too, but, and this even surprised me. I want to say that in the last 5 years or so, the Kitab Party made an incredible progressive step forward in actually acknowledging the LGBTQ community in Lebanon. Mm-hmm. Now, for most people listening, they probably would think, oh, well, I'm sure that there's some liberal party in Lebanon that's already been about that for years. And the fact is, no. The Middle East is not a liberal place. It never has been, and it still is slowly becoming one. And who even knows how and when? Most liberal Arabs are those that don't live in the country.
Right.
Because of course you have the heavy religious influence. So the fact that this party has stepped out and backed that is absolutely huge. It's incredible. It's a great step forward for the country. And just proof, in my opinion, that people can grow and change.
Yeah.
People are not beholden to their past mistakes, and that they can rectify these things, which oftentimes when people want to discuss my work, they don't even think about that, because this project is not the same as when it first started,
Right.
So,
Sure, of course.
So yeah, that's that. I guess from here, we'll move into probably talking about the Lebanon for Lebanese artwork, which of course is easily the most intense and confrontational piece of art I've ever been a part of, associated with. It really, I think it's powerful because it always elicits a response. You never get anyone that just goes, oh. You usually get either you get a fearful response, you get a curious response, or some people, more so, I would say, the industrial and power electronics enthusiasts, they appreciate it and love it, because I feel like what I managed to do with that artwork was a modern, non-white version of what the Grey Wolves did with Catholic priest fuck boys.
Yeah.
Where you're seeing these wild fascist symbols, but then at the same time, it's like, there's an Aphrodite on the cover.
Yeah.
They're naked. It's not like, they're fully clothed. It's like these people are naked, and it's just this clash of imagery all at once.
Yeah. Right.
And that is exactly what I wanted to do, and I feel like I accomplished it as such.
Right.
And so the art itself, in many ways, is supposed to be a power electronics industrial representation of me. It's not a political representation of who I am.
Yeah. Right.
And the reasoning behind the artwork, why those two images, the Kitab Party and then, the Circle of Sevens, was to represent the white half, obviously, the Circle of Sevens, and then the Arab half of me with the Kitab logo. And the reasoning for that Circle of Sevens, number one, the Kitab tree fit perfectly in the middle. I mean, obviously, it fits perfectly. Yeah. The 3 sevens, 777 is the number of God. So I feel that applies. And then not only that too, but the artwork in many ways is a representative of how people have seen me on the street. Mm-hmm. So in that artwork, you see the Circle of Sevens extending out. More often than not, this is how people approach and treat me. They just see the whiteness first. Mm-hmm. They see that. And very much so when people see that artwork, that's the first thing that they actually comment on 9 times out of 10. They don't even bring up the Kitab Party, though more often than not, people will just completely ignore that.
Right.
When frankly, actually, I think that the Kitab Party people probably murdered a lot more people, I think.
Right.
Than those fucking Afrikaners. But, that was supposed to be the whole point of it, and not only that too, but it's also supposed to show going back to that clash. Yeah. And that image in many ways represents the inner struggle that I have and continue to have. There are, being mixed is not just something that you oh, okay, I just wake up and it's like, this is what I am and I'm just going to be okay.
Right.
And I'm going to keep, no, it's a process that you carry with yourself for the rest of your life. And I feel that sometimes and I could be wrong, but I feel as a mixed person that getting to know and understand myself has taken me so much longer than I possibly thought that it would. And then you mix that in too with, I remember like a decade ago, I would have these moments where I wish that I was just Arab. I used to have these moments all the time where I'd hate myself for, not being full. But, to quote one of my favorite authors and poets, Khalil Gibran, he taught me you can't live half a life. You can't. I mean, people will ask, of course, what are you? And I'll tell them, people ask me what I am, I will always say that I'm Arab first. Because at this point in my life, that is what I feel closer to.
Yeah.
That side of me makes the most sense. And frankly, that's where I feel the most comfortable. And a lot of it goes back to my first time being in Lebanon. My time in Lebanon compared to my time in the States is unmatched. In Lebanon, people walk up to me and they will speak Arabic and French first. They will not talk to me in English first, immediately, without thinking twice about it. Yeah. Versus here in America, they'll just call me white, just right from the get. Yeah, ignore all that shit. And then when I try and explain what I am, because I don't fall into the stereotype of being Muslim, having a name like Muhammad, wearing a galabeya and a kufi, people just act like it doesn't exist. It's like, it's very strange. And not to mention too, my last name, Chami, is, it's like over 2,000 years old, my last name. Yeah. Yeah. And what it translates to is Chami derives of the Sham, which is, that's the Arabic name for Damascus. Mm-hmm. This is another, and I've even had this conversation too with other Lebanese people where they'll be like, oh, you're Lebanese, but your name is Chami. And it's like, I'm all about being proud about being Lebanese, but at the end of the day, we have a lot more in common with the Syrians than what we might be told or what we might think, what made Lebanon separate from Syria, specifically two groups, the Maronites, and then this group of Muslims called the Druze. And they were the ones who decided to go into the mountains and, set this up for themselves. So
I understand, the Lebanon for Lebanese artwork is, this is something I think a lot of people maybe outside of power electronics or industrial, I guess outside of art, and who kind of see this sort of thing as just like music or entertainment, don't really get that these images can be used. I think images in general can be used in so many ways beyond their face value, and always are in art. I mean, it's like there are certain images that, for good reason have associations with them that don't allow this. But for example, if someone puts a crucifix on their album cover or uses it in a piece of work of art, the reaction is, oh, you must be Christian. Like, that's the only reason you're using this. Like, oh, you're using a cross because you're Christian. And then the answer isn't always necessarily also, oh, so you're not Christian, so you're using it because you're anti-Christian.
Exactly.
There's a million other reasons and meanings for using any powerful symbol in art. Mm-hmm. And beyond the face value of what that has in our society. So I think, unfortunately, with like I said, I totally understand why certain symbols have such a taboo around their use whatsoever, for good reason, that a lot of times people don't really ask questions or aren't really open to that fact of interpretation.
They jump to fear. generally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's it's unfair to the artist. It is unfortunate when artists have to spell out their intentions, but you know, it's perhaps necessary sometimes, and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, and I guess to touch upon it more, you know, Lebanon for Lebanese, and people say that, you know, oh, that's too nationalistic or this and that. But, you know, Lebanon is not like America. Lebanon is not like France. It's not like Britain.
Right.
Being proud of being from Lebanon and wanting Lebanon for the Lebanese. And when I say the Lebanese, I mean them all. I don't speak about just the Maronites. No. And this is what really annoys me the most, is that a lot of people want to talk about this stuff, and yet they can't even name like 5 religious groups in Lebanon. You know, it's like the Lebanon for Lebanese. I speak for the Sunni, the Shia, you know, even the Shia, that, you know, the majority of them all ride with Hezbollah, but there's a big bunch that are not into what they're doing, that realize what they're doing is wrong. You know, so for the Sunnis, the Shia, the Druze, there's even, you know, there's Orthodox Christians. There's a big, I think there's still a fairly big Armenian group in there too as well. They've gotten along with the Lebanese great, lived there for many years too. So, you know, the country itself has had so many hands in it over the years. I mean, when the French came in after World War II, or pardon me, no, World War I, pardon me, the Ottoman Empire fell and they broke it up. The French gave the Maronites an opportunity to have their own bit of land. Now, people in the West often think that Christianity, I swear to God, I feel often that like people just have it in their minds like that Christianity came from Europe, when actually, no, I've walked where Jesus has walked, and I've grown up going to masses where they still speak Christ's language, Aramaic, which is a very different experience than going to some brand new evangelical or like very brand new type of Catholic church. It's a whole different vibe in it. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm starting to like spin out again.
No, that's it.
Because goddamn it, it's so, there's just so much of it. But the point that I'm making is that, you know, there's a track on that album too called Damascus in Flames. It's not about me hating Syrians. It's about me hating the current regime. I mean, like, I have a big issue with Bashar Assad and the rest of the Assad family. Because of their family, they sent soldiers into the country at the end of the Civil War to keep peace, but keep peace meant have a military presence. And part of that military presence was them taking my family's house in the mountains and trashing it. These sons of bitches destroyed that place. They took the toilets. Like, they're fucking assholes. And I feel that my anger over that is justified. I walked in that house. I walked amongst all the broken glass and the empty cartons of Lucky Strikes and all that crap. And I asked my father, is there any way that this could ever be fixed? And my father told me that basically because of the financial situation with my family and the fact that where it is in the mountains, it's actually, I want to say it might be close to where either my grandfather or my grandmother grew up. In those places, you want to talk about a small town. When I drove through my grandmother's town, my father said, hey, Mac, you need to pay attention because before you know it, we're going to be out of it. And I think we drove by like 3 buildings. And then my dad said, okay, we're now in the next village. Yeah, it was that tiny. And so basically my family is now stuck with this empty house that's just sitting up there, and you can't do anything with it, all because the Syrian army came through and thought they could take what's theirs.
Right.
You know? And so, like I said, too, it's like, it's just silly when some people might say that, oh, that I hate all Syrians. It's my wife is Lebanese Syrian, you know?
Right.
So all of that is just nonsense. But let's see here. So yeah, you know, the Lebanon for Lebanese at the epitome of what it was supposed to be was just supposed to be my grand power electronics industrial album. You know, I wanted it to be reflective of the culture and for the culture. You know, like West Side Gun always likes to say, he always likes to say he does stuff for the culture, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. That's what that was. That's what it was. It's not a political statement.
Right.
It's supposed to be something much more deeper and much more introspective.
Right.
You know, like I said, it's supposed to be about the internal conflict of myself being mixed. It's not about me running around like, you know what I mean, making stupid hand motions and wearing the same outfits as some fucking people. That's just silly. It's just silly.
No, I understand. I understand that usage, and I also understand why it's, you know, provocative to people. But I think that's. I think it's a false reading of your project, of the intentions. I also think, you know, you were doing it in some way to be provocative. You knew this would be.
It's power electronics.
Make a strong.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's industrial. All the OGs always did that. That's what they did. I was just following them. And, you know, if someone wants to run up and say that Mike Dando is some fascist racist, that is just the most ignorant, obnoxious thing ever. Especially after meeting with that man and taking the time to discuss the album, too, with him.
Yeah.
I mean, but, you know, some people you just never will be able to convince or change, you know.
Right. Some people aren't really interested
in the conversation,
facts, but yeah.
And I think what needs to just really be emphasized in this moment is that, and this is why we're doing this, is because it's just about reclaiming the narrative.
Yeah.
You know, like
for sure.
I never thought in my life that I would be reading about, say, white people who've never been to the Middle East say what I am and what this project is and what's good with everything. I mean, like, I never thought that some people would have the gall to ever talk like that, but I guess even in the day and age of Donald Trump, anything's possible from all sides.
Yeah.
People, they can just say whatever they want and speak on anything and have it be truth, even though they've never been, let alone spoke or talked with someone who's Lebanese, you know. And and this is reminding me, I really want to take the time to remember that to mention this. There was a gentleman named Khalil Jabara, and this story has been overlooked. No one ever talked about it, but for quite a few KOUFAR performances, we would play the sample talking about this poor guy who was, he was a Lebanese Maronite, just like me, and his family lived, I believe, in St. Louis, and they lived next to this white guy who hated them because they were Arab. He had a problem with them. He would call them Muslim, say all these, Islamophobic shit. And even though they would try and explain and say, hey, like, we're not like that, he didn't listen. And of course, in very typical fashion, the family, they tried to call the police, and the police ignored them, thinking, oh, what's the worst thing this guy's gonna do? This guy ran over Khalil Jabara's mother, and the cops still didn't do anything about it. And then one day, he walked up to the house with a gun, and Khalil Jabara stepped out, and he shot and he killed him. And then the cops finally did their fucking job and arrested that stupid son of a bitch. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And I used to play during the KOUFAR set, I think from 20 is right basically around the time that Sam joined, from I want to say 2015 up until the dreaded Varnish 2 set. That's where we played it for. We played that for about 2 or 3 years, but I think that inshallah for future live performances it needs to come back. I mean, like, I just think that this man's story is incredibly sad, and it could happen to me. The shit can happen to me. I've had people be like that with me before.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, like, anti-Arab sentiment is at an all-time high.
It's always been like, I mean, it's always been like that ever since 9/11. It's always kind of, it's always been like that. I'll never forget. I think this was 2 or 3 days after 9/11. This kid next to me said, we should just bomb all these stupid fucking people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I know. And I just looked at him and I just said, no. Because I didn't know what to say. I mean, at the time, it's like, well, I was so young, like, what, I didn't know what to say, but I just remember telling that kid no. But, that's just something that has just gone on forever and ever and ever with that type of shit.
For sure.
And I feel like, too, that sometimes, more often than not, people like to try and use the Christian edge, like that I have something in common, or I have ties to, say, white America with my faith, when, like I mentioned earlier, it couldn't be further from the truth. I'm at a point where, like I said, if you didn't go to mass, hearing Aramaic, or even for me at the minimum, because peace to all the Eastern Catholics, Eastern Christians worldwide, if you weren't breaking the hard-boiled eggs at Easter time, it's like, man, it's like no, we're not really the same. It's like, no, we're not the same at all. And so people just tend to forget that. People tend to sometimes think that Christianity are these big oppressors, when actually the part of Lebanon starting was because the main group of Christians wanted to escape persecution. And then not only that, but the same group of Christians wanted to bring on the Druze, who are basically seen as KOUFAR from all of the other Muslim groups. I guess I could say, to wrap it up real quick, is that Lebanon was formed by two groups that were actually oppressed. And then these two groups were, even though they are vastly different, they actually managed to get along for a brief period in the early 1800s and helped to start to form and have the layout for, for Greater Syria and what eventually would become Lebanon.
Yeah. So what are some of the other elements of KOUFAR that you feel are being, egregiously, misunderstood and
I think that, I mean, the most misunderstood stuff for sure just goes back to me using the Civil War imagery stuff. I think that gets skewed a lot because in the West there is this narrative all the time of the good guys versus the bad guys, the Axis and the Allies, and then to make things worse, you have bullshit like Marvel, where once again there's the good guys and the bad guys. When the situation in Lebanon, there's never been any good guys. There's no good guys, especially in the Civil War. Yeah. Everyone was awful. Everyone was awful.
What would you like people to understand when they're looking at your work, when they're listening to it, when they're seeing these images? What would you like?
They need to understand, and this goes back to what you had mentioned, I had mentioned earlier about the Kendrick Lamar, example. My people are tribal, like that's just who and what we are, and sometimes we side with stuff like from the get that we may not know. Because when I was growing, when I was first like really starting to understand Lebanon and this and that. I had a very biased view on things. I'll be honest. Of course,
Yeah.
I want to think that my people are the best. But the fact of the matter is that no, they're just as bad. It's like going back to that first conversation that we had. Don't meet your heroes. It's like, it ends up being a fucking disaster,
Yeah.
And in many ways, the Lebanese have actually they've disappointed me time and time again. Those living there, and those in power, and those that vote for them. When I'm not talking about the diaspora across America, or the diaspora in Africa, South America, Australia, etc. I'm just talking about my disappointment with the ones there. And people just, they don't understand just how complex and difficult all of this is. And they just think, sadly, the West just likes to try and simplify shit all the time. They like to do that. In the West, they always try to make things a black and white issue, when more often than not, things are always gray. Things are always gray.
Of course.
So, I'm obviously going to say that everything is, but stuff when it comes to politics and constructions of culture, identity, governments, etc., tribes, all those things, they are much deeper than just they're good, they're bad. It goes deeper than that. And I think that part of that issue is the fact that Arabs are passionate people. They're passionate people. They're very, very, very passionate people. I've always said, we love like no other. Oh, dog, we love like no other. And when we hate someone, man, we hate like no other. It's just, it's inescapable. There's a part in the Bible, Psalm 109. And this part of the Bible is often overlooked by the West because they think that like it's unbecoming of, of what Catholicism, Christianity is. And granted, this takes place in the Old Testament, but in the Psalm 109, it's basically David, and it's David imploring God to harm and destroy those that are speaking ill of him.
Yeah.
And it is the way he's talking, like I'll never forget reading this psalm for the first time. Yeah. And he's on some, I pray, that a plague descends on their families. I pray that locusts come and eat their fields, that the soil dries up. They can't, what I mean? Just like going and going and going and going. And I'm reading this and I'm just like, oh, this is just like a Middle Eastern guy who's just like, he's just like regularly upset. Like he's not like furious. He's just like, this is just like regular upset. Because we're passionate people. We're going to give it our all. Yeah. So when, like I said, it's like when we love, it's like no other. That's why I appreciate, Gibran, the writings of Gibran. And that's also too why I put that stuff in KOUFAR too, which, that I feel harkens back to the inspiration that I have from Mike Dando and Condom. God, why am I blanking on it? I can't believe I'm forgetting it, but it is without a doubt the most crucial track. It's off of the Sermons. I think it's just called Sermon. It's basically a very, very, very positive track. To me, it's like the most inspirational set of lyrics I have read in my life. And the beauty in it is that it applies. Mike Dando is so fucking brilliant. He left it open-ended so that it could be applied to everyone. I mean, it ends with saying, here, let me see if I build this. Yeah, where it says, keep faith with yourself. You have the right to be here.
Right.
That to me, that's everything. That is everything. And that is, in many ways, that is the basis of what really KOUFAR is that you have the right to be here. You know, I use all this Lebanese imagery because that is what I am. You know, I'm not gonna pull a Muslim gauze, you know, because that would be strange too if I'm doing a Lebanese project and I'm just like, and I'm talking about Hezbollah or, you know, and this and that just feels weird. Very much how in the same way, you know, like I said, you may not hear certain rappers who they may not be in gangs, but you won't see them necessarily maybe bring up others because of their family and you know, I mean, their familial affiliation.
Right.
But the point in something, not the point, but I guess at the very end of KOUFAR is that it's about being able to just, you have the right to exist, and that no one has the right to tell you that you don't, and that your stuff doesn't matter. I always used to tell people all the time that, you know, just because it doesn't matter to you doesn't mean that that's the case with me, you know? Because if there's one thing that'll just like grind my gears into infinity, when people will write stuff off and be like, oh, I don't care.
Right.
It's like, oh, well, actually, maybe like you should just a little bit. Because I've had that response before, explaining what I am, etc. I mean, man, I'll never forget. I've had so many people tell me, "Oh, I don't care what you are."
Right.
And it's like, I just feel like that's just a very like basic, ignorant thing to state because it's on some like, well, actually, you fucking should.
Yeah, it's denying your right, your identity, your dignity,
existence. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And all going back to that condom sermon, it's like I have the right to fucking be here as much as everyone else does.
Right.
Everyone else that managed to get this far and be able to walk and stand up, yeah, we all do. So I just think that apathy bullshit is just that's the real fucking problem. Because when you have that apathy, that's how you allow people to hijack Arabian people's narratives in this country.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's what's been happening, you know.
So another release that you know, has always caused controversy is the "My Name Is My Name" tape, right?
Yeah. Yes.
What's that about?
Because so, "My Name Is My Name" dropped on No Rent. Shout out to Jason Krumer, the OG. Shout out to No Rent Forever.
Yep.
At a time when, you know, people, a lot of, you know, I wasn't just the only person, you know, having a cancellation attempt or smear campaign led on. So lots of people were trying to save their asses and apologize, you know? And I mean, like, my God, it's like I had just been so taken aback by how many people had just straight up denied me and said that, oh, he's just some white guy. Oh, he's some white guy. He doesn't look Arab, you know, just more of that shit. And so instead of an apology, me and my boy decided to drop that album on some what's really good. Like, like what's really up with me and my bandmate. And "My Name Is My Name" is probably, we always used to make the joke and say, "Oh, Mac, you finally made your political album."
Yeah.
All the time, because at the end of the day, I like street politics.
Yeah.
I don't like fucking Republicans. I don't like fucking Democrats. I like street politics.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a lot more simple.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, street politics is much more in line with tribal politics.
Right.
Something that just makes more sense to me, makes me feel more comfortable being around.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people get real shook on that too, so I like it even more. But anywho, we dropped "My Name Is My Name," and obviously with the title, because that's what the album was trying to regain, was trying to take that back. And the album itself is just, the album basically talks about the entire attempt. the entire attempt to try and destroy and ruin me. And I mean, not only me, but my bandmate. People got so nasty in this. Someone tried to reach out to my mother.
Wow.
Someone tried to reach out to my father.
Wow.
And that album was me making it very, 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 very clear that that me and my boy, we aren't some fucking power electronics computer dorks.
Right.
No. We're real people who have been through real things. And the album is basically just a big fuck you to everyone that, wants to, how do I put this? It's just a fuck you to people that want to deny my existence and then act like they have actually experienced or know more about the plights of their own people than I have.
Yeah.
When in reality, I have actually met very few people that actually have been through the plights of their own people, like I have,
Right.
with evacuation and being in a refugee camp for a day.
Yeah.
And so I made it very clear on that album, basically how things can be handled. Right. I don't like being that guy. I don't. I like to be a nice guy. The same thing with Sam. We like to laugh. We like the good times. Our lives are, me and my boy, we carry so much fucking pain that we just would rather laugh about it than be mad about stuff.
Yeah.
But that album, that time really pushed us, and it was on some, we just didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
We didn't have a choice. So, we dropped it. Album sold out. I probably need to repress it at some point.
Yeah.
But with some remaining leftover copies, Sam and I decided to put together a very special edition of My Name Is My Name. And I think there's only 15 copies. And the special edition, I decided to bring out some of the more ugly side of things that had happened during the album and after. And one thing that I need to make very, very, very clear, because it's been brought to my attention that some people are trying to, once again, try and take the narrative and, make it their own. Inside that document, or inside the envelope of the special edition, I decided to include copies of the false restraining order that had been thrown at me. Now, granted, this restraining order was given to me after I didn't want to see that person anymore. After I decided to end things because they were being toxic and, playing my identity and actually using my appearance against me. And I thought that was fucked. And so I tried to just get away, and they didn't want it that way. They wanted to get the last word in on it. And so I decided to leave all that stuff in there. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what they put in the paperwork itself. But the fact of the matter is this: the court case was thrown out.
Yeah.
They lost in court. They tried to stop me, and instead they lost.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. So the point that I'm making, all the paperwork that's been included is already public knowledge. Because in America, any sort of legal, any kind of court document, it's saved and it's recorded forever, and anyone and everyone has access to it. So all I did was just make that a little bit easier for some people. Now, some people are so dumb that they want to try and use what has already been disproven against me, which I just think is like funny and comical.
Yeah.
Not to mention, these are like, I feel these are the same people who scream abolish prison, but, oh, for this guy, let's use court paperwork against him. Yeah. It's really laughable, that stuff. So I just wanted to set the record straight on that paperwork in there, because I wanted them to see how fucking ugly and awful it was.
Yeah.
You know, because I feel that I feel like that the actual paperwork reflects the pain of the truth of that whole experience.
Yeah.
So that's why I left that paperwork in there.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. And the fact was, I was found innocent.
Yeah.
And the judge decreed that neither of us were to be speaking or be in contact.
Right.
And sadly, that didn't stop them for still trying to get at me.
Right. And
they ended up enlisting the help of some dorky fucking DJ. And, they did a big write-up. And eventually, Sam and I had a conversation with them face-to-face, and we squashed stuff in a very polite, mannerly, gentlemanly type of way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Made it very clear about who we are.
Right.
But I will say this, though, the person who did this write-up, I will never forget. He did actually tell me, because I asked him, I said, why would you not want to ask? I said, do you feel that an Arab man's word is less than that of someone else? And this guy actually said yes.
Oh.
Never forget that. Never forget that right then and there. Yeah, he said that in the mission. Uh-huh. Wow. Yep. I'll never forget that. I know, right? That's a trip hearing that from some guy from some, I want to say, he's Indian. I don't know exactly what the background, tribe, etc., but yeah, that was a real trip. That was a real trip hearing that.
Yeah.
And so that's what that album, My Name is My Name, is just all about. It's all about all that madness.
Yeah.
On all the anger and everything, that came with trying to do this and set this straight.
Yeah.
I never thought in my life that my ethnicity would be up for debate.
Right.
Ever in my life. And so one thing too that I do want to make clear also about the My Name is My Name special edition, because of course, some people are trying to just, look at the court documents, but what they ignore though is when I had ended things with said individual, I took all the text messages that they were sending me on that day when I ended things, and that's what covers the entire cover of the album.
Right.
And I feel that helps reveal the crazy.
Yeah.
Because, they said that I used them so I could feel more brown.
Wow. Okay.
And, I quite frankly think that simply me being evacuated, that's enough. Fuck skin tone, man. Fuck a skin tone, dude. It's about the life experiences, dude. I've been through it with that shit, man.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre.
That's unfortunate.
It's just
to deal with, or even that your existence
it's just a bizarre
into question or being challenged, or that people outside of the context even think they have the right to speak on. I think that's the biggest problem, that people don't understand anything about it or about you feel they have the right to judge you on it. Of course everyone has the right to judge and say what they want, but I think it's it's just ignorant, and people like that shouldn't be really listened to.
No, absolutely not. And not only that, but now actually this is great, because then this actually opens up because there's nothing else really to say about My Name Is My Name, but this does actually tie into another KOUFAR release, Minority Report. Mm-hmm. And the opening track, which I'm not going to say.
Yeah.
It's a really, really, really bad word. Yeah. And I know that some people take issue with me using Middle Eastern or Arabian slurs in my art, but it's just too bad.
Yeah.
It's just too bad. You know, is the comedian named Keith Mooney? I think I want to say. I'm blanking on this comedian. I think it's something Mooney.
Yeah.
And Sam was explaining to me that it was during a stand-up of his, and he drops a hard R, right?
Yeah.
In his stand-up.
Yeah. And
the crowd all goes, and Mooney's response is, I don't know why, like, you guys are, like, tripping out. Y'all invented it.
Yeah.
And so I remember hearing that from Sam, and so that is how and why I've decided to use Arabian slurs in my work.
Right.
Is because they existed.
Yeah.
Someone hated us so much that they decided to take the time to invent a word or a phrase to describe us.
Right.
And that is a big part of KOUFAR, is putting that out there.
Right.
I mean, I even put that in My Name Is My Name. I list those words, and I wrote, you need to know that these words are mine and not yours.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I wrote too, I think, I hope that they make you feel as uncomfortable as they have made me feel as uncomfortable.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And, that's on that My Name Is My Name, but I'm sorry, I'm jumping around. But going back to the Minority Report, though, at the very beginning, I found a fantastic sample where this guy is asking, what is the color of an Arab? What's the color of an Arab? And he proceeds to say, because if we're going to start talking about color, then it all goes back to white supremacy.
Right.
So the point that I'm making is, I guess with all of this, is that those that want to just put me in a category or say that, oh, you have light skin privilege, this and that, that's just you falling into the beliefs of white supremacy.
Sure.
And being the same shit that you're preaching against. Straight up.
Yeah.
It's the same type of hypocrisy. And I don't think that that's something that's going to go away. This struggle is going to go away,
Sure.
Because, when you're mixed, you will forever hear, oh, you don't look this.
Right.
Oh, you don't look like that.
Right.
Yeah. That's just an ongoing battle. And I feel that I can hope and only pray that in due time, that when people say that, hopefully that at some point, when they say that there will be consequences.
Sure.
Very much how so if, say, like, you tell someone a racial slur and they stand up and they knock, they knock you out over it. I have a feeling that should be the new standard for mixed people. Or sure. Even Middle Eastern people. Anyone that doesn't fit in the stereotype, that needs to be the new standard. Period.
Right.
If someone says that you don't look like something, I think you need to prove what you are. It's the same thing like someone calling you out on what you rep.
Right.
If you can't rep what you claim, I don't know what to tell you, And so I feel that when people say these things now, there will be consequences. There are, and there should be. There should be. It's not cool. It's not cool at all to be like, oh, you don't look like what I used to watch, on in the cartoons.
Right.
Like even old like Looney Tunes.
Right.
It's like, oh, I thought you looked like that. It's like, no.
Yeah.
No. It's not the reality of things.
Of course.
I think that one thing I guess I do need to put out there is that the Project KOUFAR is, you know, it is fearless in a way that many Arab immigrants or Arab Americans would never be like. Mm-hmm. A lot of Arabian immigrants, especially ones like myself, oftentimes they'll keep to themselves.
Right.
I now understand why so many of them, when they come here, they stay within their communities and they don't go out.
Right.
They don't go out. I understand now why my father changed his first name.
Right.
On some heavy shit.
Yeah.
I understand, for example, why my grandmother-in-law at certain jobs kept quiet.
Right.
About her background for fear of losing her job.
Right.
Simply from just trying to find a place to live.
Right.
You know, Nicole's, you know, my wife's family story is incredible.
Yeah.
They have escaped, you know, genocide and escaped murder, you know, like it's a very, very, very incredible, powerful story. And it's so sad that it's like we feel like we're running all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of time Middle Eastern people, they're just running and it sucks. It's like you have to run away from home. You know, you're told to not take on people head on at all because of what you are and where that can put you and, you know, et cetera, what can happen.
Right.
And KOUFAR is just takes a very defiant stance in that.
Yeah.
On some, I feel like it's like a classic like tough guy or beat down hardcore line where it's on some like, where do you go where you have nowhere left to run?
Yeah.
Where do you go where there's no one left to hide?
Yeah.
Period, man.
Yeah.
And the running days are done.
Yeah.
That's actually, and that is all of this too, right here. This conversation. This isn't excuses. Right. I haven't made a single excuse. I've had an explanation for everything. Yeah. And I just feel that the time has come for just this shit to stop. Yeah. And, you know, like I've said before too, you know, this project it doesn't just touch on Lebanese stuff as well, you know? Because I have to write from my own point of view to keep it real, to keep it true, you know? But it's moments when, like, for example, I had a young Palestinian kid reach out to me through Instagram, brand new to everything, you know, green as a leaf. And I'll never forget him telling me that I love your music so much. It's music like how that represents how I feel. Mm-hmm. And that for KOUFAR, I mean, dude, that's everything. Yeah. Like, fuck the fame, fuck the infamy, and fuck the money with KOUFAR, dude. Yeah. Like, to be able to have that impact on a kid in a positive way. Yeah. Everything I could ask for, man. Yeah. Because I know what that's like. Yeah. I know what that's like, man. Being a young kid and fuck, you know. I used to say all the time, it's like I'd be in a room, everyone's like, "Oh, you're a white guy," and you put me in the room with all of them when I was young, and it's not like we got along. Our personalities are very different. The way we talk, the way we look. I mean, I have some hard ass eyebrows and a mean ass stare if I really fucking do it. I have a very expressive face compared to a lot of people, you know? I guess I need some Botox to chill myself out a bit. but you know, that's, you know, KOUFAR is in many ways, you know, even though it is not Islamic, it is a jihad. It's a struggle. It is a struggle. Yeah. It is. It's one that I'm going to forever carry. Yeah. Because I already know going out on the road in the future, et cetera, I know I'm going to hear these things. Right. And to this day, I'm probably going to forever hear stupid racist stuff.
Right.
From all sorts of fucking idiots
Yeah.
in all scenes of music. Right. It won't just be in one.
Right.
It won't just be in one.
Right.
No, it never will be.
I think when you're doing difficult art and when you're doing difficult work, there's always going to be a portion of people who don't understand it, and from those will be maybe a portion that fears it and lashes out and tries to, but those people don't really matter and they shouldn't be given power.
Yeah. I mean, my wife is always, she's the best, she was telling me, that the great art is always the most challenging because it demands, it demands you to think or learn.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like especially the KOUFAR stuff is sometimes demanding necessarily may not be the best. Some of my artwork might ask, but I often feel that my approach is a little bit more heavy-handed because I'm tired of the bullshit.
Yeah.
Tired of the bullshit. I have the right to be here.
Right.
So just as you do, anyone else.
Yep.
And so, and this is actually why too, as time has gone on, KOUFAR, I've used less and less of the Civil War stuff.
Right.
Because it's like, what's the use explaining?
Right.
Like, what's the, it's, and that's why the project took a more personal route.
Right.
And now my latest, album is pro-Palestinian.
Yeah.
Minority Report 2 is nothing but pro-Palestine poems.
Right.
So that's why I laugh when people are like, he's a fascist. And it's like, well, I currently have the Kitab Party, who I think is great, and they're standing up against fascism, and then, it's like, it's that. And then I feel like, how do I put this? Fuck. I just feel like this, I don't want to say I feel like the fascists are coming for me, you know what I mean? But it's like, I feel like, how do I put it? It's just, I feel like I experienced my own forms of it because they're like, no, it needs to be like A, B, and C, or actually, no, pardon me, that's what it was, is that, I'm being pro-Palestinian and standing up to the fascism that I see in Israel too with that album.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm just kind of very confused about all that type of stuff, I mean, I have Arab, ARAB, tattooed in my hairline.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that word and fascism, it doesn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Sure, if someone wants to say that a king is a fascist, fine. Go ahead and say that. But never, ever, like what we have seen in the history of Europe with the rise of fascism across the board. I'm not just going to say Germany. I'm going to say across the board because there were so many different countries.
Yeah.
That had that, you don't see that in the Middle East. Not once. It's either kings or it's pretty much basically kings, just about, or, Lebanon, they had their attempt at democracy and it fell apart.
Yeah.
And so, it's, I'm sure, it's going to be an ongoing battle, but I think that, this is doing this with you, Oscar, and I really thank you again for having me come on board and be able to talk about these things once and for all, because I feel like when you try and you write something on the internet, like you do an explanation, people cherry pick, people screen recap, and then they just make fun.
Right.
And in this instance where I'm talking with you, Oscar, about this stuff, they can't take my narrative away from me
Right.
in this instance.
Right.
They can't.
Right.
They can't take it. They can't twist this shit around.
Right.
And this is what I'm hoping,
Yeah.
because, you know, this isn't just about, like I said before, this isn't just about me at the end of the day. This is about anyone else that is in a similar position like me that wants to try and do, you know, challenging, interesting art, you know?
Yeah.
I believe in art. I don't agree with everything. I mean, like, I would never be the one to go up and say, like, shatter the Piss Christ piece of art, for example. Do you know about that one, Oscar?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Like, I would never. Do I agree with it? No. I think it's fucking stupid. But also, I have certain biases. But I respect the right for them to do it.
Right.
And that's fine.
Right.
Particularly, and especially, if it's coming from someone who, say, oh, you know, doesn't have the same sort of cultural attachment,
Right.
you know, as, say, like I would.
Right.
And so I think that people sometimes they have a hard time just accepting that, you know?
Definitely. But it's good that you were able to set it straight.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, thank you so much, Habibi. You know, I really, really do appreciate it. I was going to say, do you have any questions for me or thoughts?
No, I don't have any questions about what you do. I understand what you do, and I respect it, and I appreciate your honesty and your, you know, sincerity with things. And I, you know, got your back, and I also respect your willingness to talk about it directly, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
I think there's something about that. I mean, I do think there's a lot of people who really want to hold on to the fact that they will never talk about things directly, because maybe I don't think they have anything to actually say about it. But I think your willingness to also address things directly is, it's admirable as well. So.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Well, cool. Is there
Really appreciate it.
Anything else you want to add?
I guess the point that I will make about evacuation, though, is that I got evacuated. 2 years later, my dad and I spent easily one of my favorite Christmases of all time in Lebanon 2 years later. And I still go back.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to go.
Good.
I'm not afraid to leave the country in a funny manner.
Yeah.
My father has left Lebanon. I think I will never forget when he was like, Mac, this is the fourth time. It was like the third or fourth time I have to leave this country in a screwy manner and can't just get on a plane and go home. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So that's the shit's real.
For sure.
You know? The shit's real. So
shit's real in a lot of ways that people don't consider. And, you know, there's a lot of really self-centered people who, you know, think they're empathetic or political, but they're very self-centered and non-empathetic, and have a very narrow understanding of what humans go through, and that's a symptom of our times. And sorry you have to feel the brunt of that.
No, I mean, hey, help me make all this great art, right?
Yeah. Okay.
At the end of it all, you know, hey, you give me hell of inspiration.
Yeah, for sure.